Good morning, everyone. I am Paula Fisher, one of the worship associates today. Let me take my mask off. Here we go. There's just a few announcements before we begin. As some of you have already heard, the Reverend Emily has COVID and has made the decision to stay away from worship this morning while she continues to recover. She's getting better, but wants to make sure she's fully well before returning. We will be sharing the words of her sermon later in the service. You may have noticed that our pews are no longer roped off. The governing board is actively discussing how to amend our current COVID safety policy. This Sunday, we're trying out eliminating the social distancing part of our policy, but masks are still required. As the governing board continues its discussions, they want to hear from all of us too. So they will be hosting a listening circle on Zoom next Thursday, March 10th at 7 p.m. You'll be getting an email on Tuesday with more information and the link. Please come and share your thoughts about our current policy, what you'd like to see happen next, and how we can continue to move and act safely. Soup and Talent Night is next Saturday night. If you are able to log onto and sign up on Sign Up Genius, you can help us out by filling in the soup you're bringing. There's a hard copy at the information island when we cross the street after the service. Those who can share a talent, we'd appreciate that, but not necessary. It's a fun and intergenerational fellowship. Today is also Stewardship Sunday, the official launch of our annual pledge campaign. The pledge campaign letter will be mailed out to you this week. You are also invited to attend a cottage meeting after worship next Sunday, March 13, in the Beal House to learn more about the church's budget and the pledge campaign. The meeting will last about an hour. There will be refreshments and childcare available. Now you're invited to sit back, relax, take a deep breath in and out, and let yourself rest into this space as we spend the next hour together in worship.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Joan, and I share the worship associate support work with Paula this morning. And thank you for being here. Welcome you here. Wherever you live, whomever you love, however you experience this life, you are welcome here. We gather in this sacred space in the heart of Kingston and have ever since 1717. So turn down the volume of your fears. Loosen the armor around your heart. Come, let us worship together. As we begin our worship, we light our chalice to the words of Katie Gelfand. We light this chalice as a symbol of gratitude. In this sanctuary, we harvest bushels of strength for one another and offer our crop with the hands of compassion and generosity. In the authentic and gentle manner of our connections, we cultivate a simple sweetness to brighten our spirits. May we be grateful for the ways we nourish and uplift one another, for it is the sharing of this hallowed time together that sustains us. Please rise as you are willing and able and join in our opening hymn, number 361. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
rejoice and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
As part of Stewardship Sunday and for the next 2 Sundays, we will be inviting a member of our congregation to share their thoughts on why they pledged to First Parish. Today, we invite Amanda Pyne to speak to us on why she gives support to this beloved community.
Good morning. Growing up Catholic, church was a regular part of my life. We lived right across the street, and the church bells told time for me long before I learned how to read a clock. Those bells were about the only thing I loved about church. The building itself felt gloomy. The priest was ancient and dour. The service long and boring, relieved only by the one moment of perfect fear. Week after week, what if the wafer gets stuck to the roof of my mouth? Again. Eventually, we moved. Without the looming presence of the church right across the street, we became Christmas Easter Catholics. I quit CCD. I realized I didn't really believe in capital G God, and I just couldn't reconcile what the Catholic Church stood for on a social level. From then on, my visits to church were even less frequent, weddings and funerals only. I honed my healthy skepticism for organized religion. It was not for me. I'm an introvert by nature. I've often thought that my personality was uniquely suited to the challenges of the pandemic, particularly lockdown. Maintain a 6-foot personal bubble? Yes, please. Avoid social interaction? Sign me up. But the reality is that for a lot of my adult life, I felt alone and disconnected. I had my husband, of course, and our girls, but I didn't really feel connected to anyone else. Apart from my husband, my grandmother was my best friend. When good things happened, she's the one I called to celebrate with. And when bad things happened, she's the one I called to commiserate with. My grandmother died just before Christmas in 2018. And my grandfather went in October of 2019, and I was adrift. I'd been curious about the UU Church for a long time. You had me at the rainbow flag. But because of that introverted nature, I wasn't eager to try it on my own. My husband was supportive, encouraged me to bring the kids if I didn't want to go alone, but he had no interest in attending. So for a long time, I drove by and thought, someday, I'll give it a shot. When my grandparents died, I struggled with how to explain death to our then 3-year-olds. I understood suddenly why people were comforted by the thought of God and heaven and the good place. I did a lot of soul and Google searching, trying to figure out what I actually believed and how to articulate that in a way that my kids could understand. I stumbled onto secular humanism, and then from there to Unitarian Universalism, and I decided it was time to give First Parish a try. It was the first service of 2020. I told myself I'd just sit in the back and observe. I'd be unobtrusive, no pressure of awkward social interaction, just in and out. Then I got out of my car and headed towards the street, and someone began honking and shouting at me. Oh my God, it's been 28 seconds and I've already drawn attention. Turns out today's service was actually in the Beale. Okay, fine. I thanked my assailant and headed inside, where I found tables set up with art supplies. It was the bread and roses service, whatever that meant. I took a seat at the very back table and had just barely settled in when I was greeted by Jen Shattuck. and then Reverend Monica, and then Barbara and Grace, and then several others. My hopes of anonymity were pretty well dashed. I had attended the same church for 10 years and never felt like more than one more face in the crowd. And here I was being welcomed and embraced in my first 5 minutes. The sermon was about unions and solidarity. I started to realize that maybe First Parish was something special. Now, don't get me wrong, I still left before coffee hour, but still, I knew I'd be back. Next week's sermon focused on Frozen 2. The week after that, Lin-Manuel Miranda came up. I was sold. I was welcomed, seen, and cared for. And when the pandemic started and the lockdown came, and I got all the isolation this socially awkward, introverted heart could ask for, I didn't feel alone. Thanks to First Parish, I was more connected than I'd ever felt in my adult life. And that's why I give to First Parish, who in 2 short years has already given so very much to me. Thank you.
This time in our service, we just ask for sit quietly and so are some silent meditation.
Reverend Emily selected this poem for our reading today because it echoes to her the courage and spirit of the Ukrainian people who are currently fighting for their freedom from Russian domination. I know we share her awe of their commitment and their love of their country, which speaks so powerfully to each of us and our collective work for a just and peaceful world. The Low Road by Marge Piercy. What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can set you up. They can bust you. They can break your fingers. They can burn your brain with electricity, blur you with drugs till you can't walk, can't remember. They can take your child, wall up your lover. They can do anything you can't stop them from doing. How can you stop them? Alone, you can fight. You can refuse. You can take what revenge you can, but they roll over you. But 2 people fighting back to back, cut through a mob. A snake dancing file can break a cordon. An army can meet an army. 2 people can keep each other sane, can give support, conviction, love, hope, sex. 3 people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With 4, you can play bridge and start an organization. With 6, you can rent a whole house, eat pie for dinner with no seconds, and hold a fundraising party. A dozen make a demonstration. 100 fill a hall. 1,000 have solidarity and your own newsletter. 10,000 power and your own paper. 100,000, your own media. 10 million, your own country. It goes on, one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again after they said no. It starts when you say we and know who you mean. And each day you mean one more.
When we give, we say yes to something we value. In this congregation, we take up an offering each week to say yes to the values of our UU faith and yes to this beloved community. Together, we use these gifts to serve with ever greater love. Please give as you are able. Today's offering will be gratefully received. Our offering anthem is Simple Gifts, music by Johann Paco Bell, arrangement by Donald Moore, and featuring Angel Vendetti on the violin. This sermon by the Reverend Emily Bruce is entitled Growing Together. We gather as a welcoming community to honor the sacred in all of life, to foster spiritual growth, nurture curiosity and learning, and build a just, compassionate, and sustainable world. That is the mission statement of this congregation as printed in our bylaws. There are some noble words, to be sure: compassionate, welcoming, nurturing curiosity, honoring the sacred in all. Coupled with our Unitarian Universalist principles, our mission statement certainly describes a faith worth supporting, a calling to build a world of peace and justice, a vision of a future worth doing everything possible to bring into sharp focus. Today is Stewardship Sunday. Today is the day where we launch our pledge campaign for next year's budget, where we talk about what matters to us, about how we live that mission statement into being. We talk about how this church helps us be the people we are called to be, and how the pledges from our members and friends make it all possible. Today is also the end of a week full of terrible, traumatic violence committed against the Ukrainian people by Russian leadership. I say leadership specifically because there is overwhelming evidence that many Russian citizens do not support this invasion. And thanks to social media, 24-hour news, and the world of the internet, we've all watched it unfold in real time. It's been hard, shocking chapter in the life of our world this week. After how many weeks of hard, shocking chapters? Another chapter of stress and anxiety, of fear and anger and suffering. But the Ukrainian people have made themselves into a beacon. For their resistance, their refusal to surrender, they are outmatched, they are outnumbered, but they are not giving up. This week, it feels as though through their struggle, our very humanity is on display as a live wire of justice against oppression, David against Goliath, hope against despair. Watching it all unfold, I was reminded of a well-known quote that was adopted by Martin Luther King Jr., but actually written by Theodore Parker, a Unitarian minister, abolitionist, and general firebrand. He's a personal favorite of mine and Emily's and mine. The quote is, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." This is beautiful and true. And I especially love the further explanation given by the then Attorney General Eric Holder in a 2016 interview with CBS. Holder cautioned that the arc bends toward justice, but it only bends toward justice because people pull it towards justice. It doesn't happen on its own. This week, we see the Ukrainian people attempting to bend the moral arc of their universe towards justice and away from oppression, authoritarianism, and fear. In their struggle, we see a people that believe in themselves and each other, a people who know and value the precious culture and life they are fighting for. No one needs to teach them about their inherent worth and dignity. They're fighting to defend it on the streets of their cities. They are going all in for their families and their communities. They are a lesson for us Unitarian Universalists, an example of what it means to be led by a life of conviction, ethics, and morals. This is what the muscle of our faith is here for too, to let the power within us reach up and grasp hold of the moral arc of the universe and bend it. With all of our strength, to bend it towards love, towards freedom, towards justice. And this is how I connect us this Sunday, this Stewardship Sunday, to the larger world that is raging around us. We are called to this free faith, each of us. We are called by love, by community, by a world crying out for compassion. We are called by our own mission statement to build a just, compassionate, and sustainable world. This free faith of ours isn't actually free. We know that. We have to take responsibility for it. We have to act on it. We have to share it and build it. In our day-to-day lives, it may not feel that way. It may feel like committee meetings and coffee hour, reading the newsletter and planning your number for the soup and talent night. But those are all privileges of a free people, privileges we enjoy and cannot take for granted, especially in this week when we see freedom being stolen on the other side of the world. And that is why Stewardship Sunday is important too. It may feel wrong to talk about money when the world is on fire. It may feel unseemly to stand here and ask you to pledge to support our faith when life is already so hard, when inflation is rising and salaries aren't, when the needs seem infinitely greater than our capacities to give. But in this moment, I'm reminded of a Holocaust story that I've heard many times before. The story is this. When the rail transports arrived at concentration camps and unloaded their desperate and naked human cargo, one of the ways the Nazis tried to destroy the prisoners' spirits was to randomly offer a blanket to 1 out of every 6 people who were freezing and broken by the journey. The blanket was a symbol of the arbitrary divisiveness of the death camps. It was given to undermine any collective feeling, to destroy any hope of compassion for a fellow prisoner. In every case, however, the first thing the person who received the blanket did was to attempt to share it with his fellow prisoners, making it stretch around 5 or 6 bodies. The threats to humanity across the world will not stop anytime soon. Injustice is ever present, and there will always be reasons to fight for that compassionate and sustainable world in our mission statement. There will always be a Ukraine out there, reminding us how much freedom we enjoy comparative to the world's suffering, and how little we can do to bend that moral arc of the universe on our own. But we all have a bit of blanket to share. We can all do that which our hearts call us to do, to foster a world of compassion and justice in our own way. By our membership in this faith and this beloved community, we can offer our own resistance and share the light of compassion and justice. What matters is that you are here. What matters is that you use your pledges, your places of privilege to speak truth to power. What matters is that you share the blanket however you are able. Friends, as you receive your pledge letters this week, I invite you to think about how you are called to live out this free faith of ours. Find your own answer to what makes Unitarian Universalism and this congregation worth supporting. I close with the last few lines of our reading this morning. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again after they say no. It starts when you say we and know who you mean, and each day you mean one more. May it be so. Amen. It's now time for our closing hymn. We will be doing just the first verse only. And the hymn is number 1028 in your teal colored hymnal and is the Fire of Commitment. Friends, we extinguish the chalice flame, but not the light of truth or the warmth of this community. These we carry with us in our hearts until we are together again. May it be so, and go in peace.